There are still quite a few seats in the front. If you can come just in the front and take a seat, please. If we can ask everybody to come and take a seat quite rapidly. We are already a little bit late to start, and we have a lot of people online. So we would like, as a courtesy, not to start too late for them. There are still seats in the front. We are very sorry. There is quite a lot of people, but please take a seat or on the seats on the side.
Au milieu, c'est très bien. Transforme. Ça fait une pyramide.
Okay, thank you very much. We will now start the conference. Thank you, everybody, for being here this morning. As we see, we have a lot of people present here today. We have also a lot of people online, more than 280 people registered online. So thank you very much for your patience. We are very honored to welcome you here with the CCFU. The CCFU is a French-Ukrainian Chamber of Commerce. Many of you here are familiar faces and members of the Chamber, and we thank you for that. You are today with the with Jeantet Law Firm. Jeantet is a law firm where I'm a partner. I'm been in Ukraine for the last 10 years. We advise a lot of investors in the country, and we continue doing so during these quite difficult times. Today's conference is about rebuild and reconstruction of Ukraine. It's a difficult topic to sometimes to discuss when, as we all know, the war is still going on and the invasion is still going on and being fought and fought by Ukraine. Nevertheless, as was mentioned by Président Macron already in the conference in Bercy in 2022, the reconstruction needs to start now, and we need to start doing things in order to be able, at the time when the war will end, we hope it will be the soonest, to be really able to reconstruct and rebuild Ukraine in what we hope a more sustainable and even better way. So thank you all for being here. I'm very pleased, and without any further ado, we'll present our guests. We have four very prominent guests with us today. I will start with Pierre Heilbronn, who is the special envoy of the President of France to the Ukraine. So Pierre, thank you for being here. We have Davide La Cecilia, who is a former ambassador of Italy to the Ukraine and is now the special envoy of Italy, of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Italy to the Ukraine. So thank you, Davide, for being here today. We have Francis Malige with us. Many of you know who is the head of Investors Relations at the EBRD. And Francis, thank you for being here. And we have finally Ignace Haertle, who is a large investor and entrepreneur in Ukraine, has been very successful in the construction business, and will give us a more practical analysis and approach to his views to what has been in Ukraine, what the difficulties have been, and what the upside has been of being investing in Ukraine. So thank you very much. I will say one word about the French Chamber of Commerce and our activities, because I think it's also quite important. The French Chamber of Commerce is very happy to be able to organize events both in Ukraine and in France. In Ukraine, we organize also a lot of podcasts, which you can have access freely online. We organize a lot of meetings with the government and the authorities of Ukraine on all sectors that are of interest for investors. We also currently have a committee dedicated to reconstruction and rebuilding in Ukraine. And lastly, and maybe more importantly, we have now launched and are proposing a new product, which is a guide, and it's how to say, it's a special access that you can have to all construction companies present in Ukraine, where you will have all the details of the size of the activity of the Ukrainian partners, if you're looking for Ukrainian partners, so that you can be put in connection with all these Ukrainian companies in the construction sector. And it's specialized by sectors and by a turnover, by number of people, by regions. And we are proposing this product if you're interested. So a lot of activities as a chamber. And we remind you all that it's important to be a member and of the chamber, because we, of course, are living only from memberships. And as you know, currently, the situation is not ideal for anybody, and especially for the chamber. So everybody is welcome to join the chamber and help us continue our activities in Ukraine. So thank you very much. Without any further ado, I will. The protocol would ask me to start with Pierre Heilbronn, but Davide has told us that he has another important meeting he has to join. So we were very honored to have him today. And so I will give the floor to Davide to tell us a little bit more about, you have all heard about this very important conference that took place in Rome in June. A lot of projects have been announced. And so Davide, maybe you can give us a bit more insights about what were the announcements, what were the concrete announcements made, and also, because it's also quite important for French companies, what are the projects? What is the project that Italy is specifically developing in Italy bilaterally, and so that we can understand a bit more what Italy is doing from an international perspective. Thank you very much, Davide, and if we can ask you to start. Just one word. You can speak in French or in English as you want. Just importantly, technically, we need to speak really well in the microphone. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you very much. Bonjour à tous. Merci pour votre accueil chaleureux à Paris aujourd'hui. Merci à l'organisateur de la conférence, à la Chambre de commerce franco-ukrainienne, et notamment au président Bertrand Barnier et à la directrice Maud Joseph pour l'invitation. Et félicitations pour votre newsletter, qui je lis souvent et qui est vraiment bien fait et très utile. Un remerciement particulier à mon collègue Pierre Heilbronn, envoyé spécial du Président de la République pour la reconstruction de l'Ukraine, pour son travail ensemble continu à soutien de ces pays tourmentés par 3 ans et demi d'agression russe. La France, nous croyons, est un partenaire très important de l'Italie sur la résilience en temps de guerre et la reprise post-conflit en Ukraine. Nous y travaillons ensemble depuis le début de la crise et notre coopération a bien progressé d'une manière tout à fait efficace. Si vous permettez, je vais continuer mon discours en anglais sur le thème de la conférence sur la reprise de l'Ukraine 2025 que nous venons d'accueillir à Rome le dernier juillet. And I'm going to speak about the achievements of the conference. Our intention with the organization of the conference at Rome was to reinforce the work which was done by previous conferences held in Lugano, in London, and Berlin, offering international partners, donors, and business a unique opportunity to coordinate their action, to renew their commitment in terms of political, military, but also financial, economic, humanitarian support to Ukraine. Never we think like this time, in view of these the diplomatic initiatives that are under our eyes, including yesterday in Paris, to end the conflict in Ukraine, we think that the URC has been so much at the center of the effort of the international community to support Ukraine. What we are doing in terms of budget support, including in Ukraine donor platform that we share with the G7 plus countries in terms of energy resilience, enlargement acceleration is key in terms of providing guarantees to Ukraine and guarantees that Ukraine can reach a just, a durable peace from a position of strength. Coming to the numbers, compared to other editions, the URC 2025 was the largest in terms of attendance. We had 7,000 participants. It was quite challenging, I must say. 112 delegations, 75 countries, 35 international organizations, and the European institutions. So we have 10 commissioners, the president of the commission, the president of the European Council, 16 heads of state. And in terms of stakeholders, these conferences are organized under a whole of society approach. We had 2,000 companies, 600 organizations of the civil society, and 400 local and regional authorities. And this was very, very important. It was a demonstration of the great importance that the international community attaches to the resilience, the recovery, the modernization of Ukraine and its free and prosperous future. The conference in Rome was also the most productive in terms of events that were organized, activities such as 28 panels for workshops, 7 labs, 10 multilateral meetings involving almost 1,000 speakers. We had also outside the conference location some 40, 50 side events which took place in Rome in the 3 days of the conference. We had a business fair, and we were able to mobilize a lot of funds. There were 10 billion euro of new financial commitments from partners, countries, international banks. 5 billion euro came from agreements signed by institutions and business. Totally, there were 400 agreements signed during the conference. And the initiative has been organized, of course, with cooperation. There was a long preparation. We organized it in cooperation with international partners, including France, which played a key role. Through a number of preparatory events, the conference had, as you know, 4 dimensions: business, the human dimension, the local dimension, the European dimensions. And for each of these events, we organized a preparatory event on the road to the URC 2025. All the events involved hundreds of companies from Ukraine, from Italy, international. The idea was to build a process. This, I must say, is the most important contribution given by the conference in Rome. The idea not to make the conference just a one-off talking show, but to build a long-standing cooperation on which we can really establish a partnership, not only with the Ukrainian government and with the Ukrainian government, but also among international players and international companies. This is a message that we always give to Italian companies. The Italian economic fabric, as you know, like most of the European countries, is made by small and medium enterprises, and small and medium enterprises feel most of the time alone when they go abroad, also in terms of people working for them. And so they need a connection, and that's what we worked on during the conference in order to reinforce initiatives such as the small and medium enterprise coalition to give them a solid support in investing into Ukraine. Another very important thing on which we work with Pierre a lot was how to enable companies to participate in the reconstruction of Ukraine. We hope to operate under a situation of end of conflict or near end of conflict. But this is not the case. And of course, in such a situation, we need to put a strong accent on the work on risk insurance, war insurance, and on financial instrument to encourage companies to invest in Ukraine. And this was one of the most important, coming to what we've done for the private sector, one of the most important achievements. The conference, first of all, this European flagship fund, which is at the moment the largest equity fund for the reconstruction of Ukraine, which has been very strategic. It's going to be very strategic thanks to the joint efforts by Italy, France, Germany, Poland, the European Commission, and the European Investment Bank. It was born with initial endowment amounts of 220 million euro, which will allow to promote investment of up to 500 million, which is scalable to 1.5 billion in the future. And here, Pierre, of course, will say more about that, but I want to thank him very much for his leadership. Pierre was the authentic driving force in this achievement. We also announced at the European level a new 2.3 billion euro package of agreements under the Ukraine investment framework, which is expected to mobilize up to 10 billion euro in investments. And on a bilateral note, as far as Italy is concerned, we announced 50 million euro fund for a G2G agreement with Ukraine, following France model. And we signed with Ukraine a memorandum of understanding on preferential financial instruments for reconstruction with our ECA, SACE, at the center, which was an approach very much appreciated by Kiev and shared by several partners. Other elements which are very important in the conference and are innovative are the special space which was given to defense and the strategic industry as a key business sector and a key investment sector into Ukraine with a dedicated panel and workshop to reinforce partnerships, and also cybersecurity, to which we allocated a session. We also have a session on critical raw materials, which is will be one of the key elements of international investments in the country. We have all seen the strong interest on this, but of course, Europe and countries shouldn't sleep. We should be very active in this sector. And one thing is clear, I believe, since the beginning, that everybody, American companies, will take advantage of the regulatory framework, which is coming from the implementation of the association agreement, the association agreement with Europe, and from the enlargement. So also the Americans with their investment fund will work under a regulatory framework, which is ours, which is established according to our rules. Other sector of work were energy. We had a multilateral meeting of the G7 plus energy coordination group. discussing how to energy resilience in Ukraine. Winter is coming. We saw that there is a resumption of attacks against energy infrastructures. And we had also a meeting of the Ukraine donor platform, which is the coordination system for external financing needs, for progressing in the reform sector for recovery and reconstruction. And there was another element that I want to underline to put to your attention, the work of the Business Advisory Council, which was established within the Ukraine donor platform, which has also significantly contributed to the renewed interest of private companies for Ukraine. And we are all looking forward to working with the Business Advisory Council under the new leadership of Italy. There was a change of presidency from Germany to Italy for the year 2025-2026. So this is, in synthesis, the work which was being done in the conference, the deliverable provided by the conference. We must not forget that the most important deliverable for Ukraine in the conference is the acceleration in the enlargement process. That's why, as international community and international donors, we are following very closely what they are doing in the field of law, financial management, green transition, energy, agriculture, of course, competitiveness, and inclusive growth. And on this, I must say that it is of the utmost importance that there won't be backsteps, notably in the area of the rule of law. And that's why we've been very pleased by the rapid reintegration of the legislation on anti-corruption a few weeks ago, which is a good sign of how Ukraine has a lively civil society, and the government of Ukraine pays attention to it. So this is what I wanted to tell you about the Rome conference, on which we have to work on many follow-up, and perhaps, as I said at the beginning, the most important achievement of this conference was really to build a process, to build a solid, steady process of support for recovery, action, and modernization of Ukraine. And now we are, of course, looking forward to working with the next Ukraine Recovery Conference host. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Davide. Thank you for this introduction and important cornerstones that have been led during the conference. Indeed, the investment fund of the European level is quite important. We are very pleased to see that Italy is somehow following the path of France on this bilateral fund. That will be the transition to Pierre Heilbronn. So Pierre, France has set this 200 million fund last year. Quite a lot of projects in 4 or 5 sectors have been chosen, about 20 projects. We have now, most of them have either started being implemented or are very close to it. So the 2 questions I would like to raise and address to you would be, first, if you can give us a feedback on how the projects are functioning, what has been the main difficulties or main achievements, lessons learned. And we hear that there is a second fund that is being put in place. And of course, a lot of companies are interested. There were already a lot of companies interested for the first fund, but we hear that that's maybe the presence today and also the presence online. A lot of people are maybe expecting and waiting to see what, if you could give us more insights on what is going to be and what is. Thank you very much, Priya.
No, thank you very much, Bertrand, and thank you for all of you, because you've been very much partners in this journey. I've been appointed nearly 3 years ago. So I'm the oldest special envoy, at least in the G7. And we've tried to approach all these issues in quite a concrete and operational way. Obviously, there is all the institutional framework Davide mentioned, which is very key in terms of ensuring coordination about priorities, obviously working with international financial institutions on projects, but I've been very much focusing on things which can make the life of yourself, of French and European companies easiest, and position themselves in front of this great endeavor, which is not only the recovery of Ukraine today, but also its longer term reconstruction. And I think there is a space, obviously, my former institution, beloved institution, we share with Francis, who's, by the way, when I entered the EBRD in Ukraine as managing director of the region, but based in Kiev in different times. But some issues have not completely disappeared, even if we are in a very different context. But I think there is a role of everybody, both at the multilateral, European, and bilateral level. And what we've tried through this fund is a little bit to use, I have to say, from a French perspective, it both as a very concrete tool to support companies, especially SMEs, but also to make of Ukraine a little bit a laboratory of what development aid should head on. And as you know, there is and there will be a lot of debate about what is the role of development support and an institution. I think trying to first start from the needs of the country which is benefiting from this effort is really key. And I think the fact that the project which have been financed by the 200 million fund have been chosen by the Ukrainian government at that time with Yulia Svyridenko, who was Minister, Vice Prime Minister and Minister of Economy, is really key. The fact that all these projects were prioritized by the Ukrainian government with a transparent tool, which is DREAM, is an important element, because beyond the financing, what is extremely important is to make a system transparent and which allows also private sector to have confidence in the longer term commitment of Ukraine to this transparency in its reconstruction. Afterwards, in terms of sectors, and I don't want to be too long, these have been very much defined hand in hand with Ukraine. So these are critical infrastructure sectors with a time horizon of delivery of all these projects, which is 18 months maximum. So it goes from now to 18 months. And I think this agility is really key, not to make only big speeches about what Ukraine should do, but to be on the side of the real economy and the real project now. So these projects have been first in the energy sector. More than 60 million have been devoted to that sector. And this is really key. Also, Davide mentioned next winter, but it has been also a great priority, including in sectors which are quite linked to our know-how, like the nuclear sector, which is probably more difficult to push at the European level because of the sensitivities linked to that. It has been very much in demining. It has been very much in health. 7 projects out of the 19 are in the health sector. And that has been probably one of the most visible contribution, which is on the ground. I've been also in Ukraine in the last weeks for the delivery of these projects in Ukraine. So that has been, honestly, and the fund has been oversubscribed with only 2 months of more or less call for proposals by many times. So we receive nearly 800 million of requests of companies going to Ukraine, discovering the market, trying to find partners. And I think that's the most important part, because companies, and as you know, French companies are the first foreign employers in Ukraine, BNP or Crédit Agricole, who is here very well represented, are therefore have been there for a long time. They know how to operate. They can be a point of entry for other French companies, but it's quite different from SMEs who are in Toulouse or in Albi, who have never been to Ukraine. So that's on what we've tried to achieve. We are indeed discussing a new initiative, which will be also with a target of financing of 200 million euros, despite our quite strained public finances. The idea is to draw the lessons also from the first fund. So think that additionality is very important. Probably 100% coverage by grants is a little bit, I wouldn't say over generous, but it's, I think it's not suited to all sectors. We will put a lot of importance on co-financing. So for companies which will apply to this new fund, where obviously the French state will put money, they will have, you will have to find other partners, obviously yourself finding a capacity also to take part of the burden, to find also, and there are quite a lot of companies, for example, in the energy sectors in Ukraine, who consider that if it's really a priority, they should have a stake or skin in the game. So I think when you discuss with Naftogaz, with DTEC, with, with the Ministry of Health or a hospital, there is a part which will have to come from them. But also from other bilateral donors, from regional authorities, both in Ukraine, but also in France. So the idea is really to have the maximum leverage based on a share, which will have to be defined, obviously, in the discussion, budget discussion in France. And you are following, obviously, the news to see that it will not be completely straightforward. But the idea is really that, and we will negotiate in the next days very much this new G2G agreement, which will define the criteria, which will allow from the beginning of 2026 to deploy the second wave of projects in Ukraine, and afterwards. And that the final aim is to allow these companies, yourselves, to either see other source of concession pots, more or less, in the French state, in multilateral or bilateral institution, but at the end of the day, obviously, fly by your own, on your own commercial capacities. And that's obviously what we aim for, so that you are positioned to say we were at the beginning of the story there in Ukraine, on your side in Ukraine, and afterwards we have a credibility from a business point of view to deliver things you need and invest in a country we believe in.
Thank you so much, Pierre. I will now give the floor to Francis Malige. Francis is the Managing Director and Head of Financial Institutions at EBRD. Thank you, Davide. Thank you so much. And EBRD has been the largest investor in Ukraine for now a very long time. It has invested since the beginning of the war, as far as I understand, over 7 billion euros in projects. So it's really the most active and largest IFI on the ground. It invests in many sectors. It's too long to list them all. Maybe, Francis, what you could give us is an insight of what are the projects, what is the main focus currently, and what is the bank seeing for the next phase in terms of investments, and also. There is a lot of questions about if the war and when the war will end, how to coordinate the international aid, and will the EBRD be playing a larger role than it is currently doing today, and how is it envisaged? The plans on that.
So I guess the short answer to your last question is yes, we will be playing a larger role. We're already playing actually a larger role than before the large-scale invasion started. When I was in Ukraine, BERD was investing around 1 billion a year in the Ukrainian economy. We're actually now past 8 after 3.5 years of war, so on a pace of more than 2 a year, and certainly in the reconstruction phase. We expect that demand will be there. We are a demand-driven institution. We're not a planning institution that decides that there's an envelope of this much for that sector. We really respond to our clients' requests, but we expect that there will be more, and that our shareholders have, for the first time since the creation of BERD 35 years ago, agreed to a cash capital increase, 4 billion euros, to enable us to continue supporting the economy of Ukraine. Now, there's a few things that are not going to change as well after the war ends. And the first thing that is not going to change is Russian aggression. Okay? Russian aggression of Ukraine exists since 400 years, okay, since the birth of modern Russia. So it grew outside of the Principality of Muscovy. Okay? It needs territory as far as it can in order to buy security, because there is no security on the great northern European plain. Okay? So that is basic geopolitics. Ukraine is unfortunately in the middle of it. And so the only way to support and to sustain the economy of Ukraine going forward is a credible security arrangement. Doesn't necessarily mean NATO, it can mean anything. There's a credible security arrangement in North Korea, in South Korea with North Korea, that is resting simply on a ceasefire, okay, plus a few thousand US Marines on the border, okay? And that is the kind of things that need to exist, because otherwise you guys won't be going, okay? Or you will be going like you go today with precautions, with a lot of caution, with avoiding certain investments and so on and so forth, right? So but the Russian aggression is here to stay, unfortunately, but it's a fact of life, and it will only be countered by a strong Ukrainian army. We're fortunate to have an extraordinary people of Ukraine that is building an absolutely stunning military force, but the backing of countries like France and others. Another thing that's not going to, that may be measured in decades, not centuries, is the support of BERD. Okay, we've been there for 35 years. We're there for the next 35 years, I'm sure, with projects across the economy. And now when you look at where we invest where we see client demand. If I look at what we do in a financial institution, for example, sector, the products we have and we're deploying today in Ukraine are in majority projects and products that did not exist when the large-scale invasion started. Portfolio risk sharing with Ukrainian banks did not exist at any kind of scale at BERD before the war started. We rolled it out in Ukraine. At the Rome conference, we signed north of €1 billion worth of agreements with the Ukrainian banks to support their lending to the local economy. The SME from Toulouse that needs an investment will go to Crédit Agricole, will go to BNP Paribas. They might also go to other good banks in Ukraine. There's a few more. Not only those two, but and get some financing, and they will get some risk sharing from us. We've deployed veterans reintegration products because veterans are the blood of the economy, not just the blood on the front line. And when they come back, they will want to be entrepreneurs. They will come back to their jobs in the banks. They will come back to their jobs in industry, but they will be transformed. And that needs to be taken into account because Ukraine has right now 1.4 million people that are in the military or have been in the military. They have not yet come back in meaningful numbers. They're fighting. But when they do, the economy needs to be ready. We have created the products that go for it. We have also deployed, I mean, out of the 8.2 billion, which is the number as of today, that we've invested in Ukraine since the large-scale invasion started, 3 billion have gone to energy security. One thing we've done together with our partners in the banking sector, and originally it was actually an idea of Crédit Agricole, so thank you, is a specific facility to support the creation of distributed energy production. Because today in Ukraine, if you want to invest in a gigawatt of energy capacity, you better hide the address very well. Okay? Because that's going to be the #1 target for all of the war machine of Putin. But if you create 100 times 10 megawatt capacity through solar plants, biogas, and so on and so forth, it's much more difficult for the Russians to take all of these things out one by one. That's exactly what we've been doing. We've put 700 million to work with the banking sector to support local private sector, small municipalities, and so on, to create this capacity to be independent from the large-scale production of energy. It's not sufficient, but it helps, and every megawatt helps go through the winter today. Now, I think what you see today in Ukraine is life goes on. Right, and when you talk to the banks, all of them have this system where they say, okay, the country has 3 sort of zones. You have the green zone, you have the amber zone, you have the red zone, which is kind of the front line and the occupied area, and life is almost as safe as normal in the green zone. Occasionally, there are military actions. We saw that Russia reached deep into the west recently, destroyed a large investment by an American company. But by and large, a lot of the country has not seen one piece of military action. 2/3 of the country have not seen one shell fall on the territory. Okay? And so it is possible to invest in that part of the country. And when I look at the pipeline we have, for example, with municipalities, we finance trolley buses, we finance district heating, we finance all sorts of projects of that nature, not just reconstruction. And that's very important because the needs are there today. We don't need to wait for a peace agreement or a ceasefire. God knows when it will arrive. I wish it arrives quickly, but God knows. And so we continue financing the real economy. Of course, in the public sector, that's been so about half of our amount of investment. It's 15% of our number of projects, but it's half of the amount invested. For example, we've supported Naftogaz because Naftogaz has been targeted I guess probably for the first time in the spring of this year. The Russians have started hitting gas production facilities, so the upstream production, and that's a problem because then Ukraine, where does Ukraine get the gas if it can't extract it, right? So we have put together a facility with the support of some of our partner countries as well to help Naftogaz buy gas and store it. First, it's cheaper in the summer, and then you store it. Ukraine has some of the largest storage of gas in Europe, as you know. So store it to be able to heat the population in the winter. We've worked with the railways as well. We've worked with Ukrenergo and so on to help rebuild the infrastructure as it is being targeted by the Russian forces. In the private sector, we work a lot through the banking sector. Keep the trade lines open so that Ukraine can continue importing what it needs. And we have in the room somewhere in the back, the big champion of trade finance for EBRD in Ukraine, Ukrogas Bank. I don't know where Maya is, but thank you for being such a good sport. But also directly with large corporates locally. They don't need to be Ukrainian. They can be also foreign owned, like again, your SME from Toulouse should talk to us. And so the life goes on and it will continue to. And so EBRD continues to finance all of these things. So I don't really have a priority to announce because the whole of the economy of Ukraine needs to continue living and operating. Yes, energy, yes, food security, yes, transportation, and so on. But the EBRD is everywhere where there's a need in the private sector and to a large extent in the public sector in a country.
Thank you so much, Francis. I think it's important indeed to remind that the economy of the country continues. There is this large-scale invasion, of course, but about 80% of the economy continues to work. We see it through the very great resilience of the Ukrainian people, continuing to have a life and economy functioning is extremely important. in terms of the French business and French presence in Ukraine, what we have seen, and it's important we remind it every time, is to remind that none of the companies present in Ukraine before the invasion have left. None of important ones have left. We are indeed, and Pierre reminded it, France is the largest foreign employer in the country. So we have a very large presence. French business is very present in Ukraine. It has not discovered Ukraine with the invasion. We have been there for 30 years for certain companies. We are one of the country, we are not the main investor in the country, of course, but we are maybe the only investor that is the only country that is so present in all sectors. And that's really important. We have two financial institutions that were mentioned. We have a large retail business, businesses present in Ukraine. We have very present in the automobile sector, where we are Stellantis and Renault, about the largest importer of cars in the country. In the agro sector, we are very present. In the tech, in all sectors, France is present, and that's very important. And now to make a transition to Ignace, who has been an investor in Ukraine, and I think it's important also to give the feedback and the insights of people that are on the ground, that are dealing with the difficulties that were sometimes mentioned about energy, about the mobilization of people, the fact that it is very hard on families, on people, and also the fact that people and Ukrainians continue the resilience, continue to work, which is really impressive. And so Ignace, if you give us a bit more of an insight of your journey as an investor and the challenges, but also the upsides of investing in Ukraine. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Bertrand. I founded an engineering and construction business in Ukraine 15 years ago, and last month the construction business has been sold. The engineering business is commonly held with Aegis, big French, the largest French engineering company. So most of you understand that my sector of business, the construction engineering, is very labor intensive and very masculine. So traditionally, lots of our employees are, especially in the construction side, men. Talking about feminization of labor in Ukraine, but when you need to pour concrete, somehow the ladies don't line up to start the job. So we were very, very under pressure because we had one competitor, which was the Ukrainian army as an employer. So we had to face that challenge throughout the years of the war, which we managed quite well because we managed to become a critical company. So we, since 2 years, we are able to protect our employees, our male employees, from the draft, which gives us a very big edge as an employer, but also as a service provider in the Ukrainian economy. So the company, Vatsanode, was over 200 employees. We had references with most of the large private clients in Ukraine, and as well we have references with about 10 multilateral and sovereign funds that are active in Ukraine. So the client landscape has changed a lot, of course, after the war started. We went from, at least us, we were mainly private investment driven, and we managed to realign under sovereign and multilateral fund investments. So we managed to show a lot of growth after the war started. And since, in January this year, we have been contacted by a buyer, which is largest construction company in Central Asia that wanted to enter market. So the deal was negotiated within 6 months, and it was closed 1 month ago. So this deal actually is the largest deal in our sector since the history of Ukraine. So it was a very good event, and it's a useful event.
Sorry, there is a technical issue. Maybe you could cut the microphones. The people online, please make sure you cut your microphone, as otherwise there will be some echo. Thank you very much.
So where was I? Yes, so it was a deal that carries lots of value because first of all, it's a strategic investor that came in. It's a
Excuse me, but we can't hear you anymore.
It's okay now.
You have muted speakers.
Kind of support in order to lever this war risk.
So look, I mean, there is war insurance available on the Ukrainian market in a limited fashion, and we recognize that it is a problem. So it's been the fastest market to reopen has been cargo for maritime transport, and that's for a very simple reason: is that war risk is a routine part of aviation and marine risk in insurance. These are the only two lines of insurance that feature this risk as a normal clause in most contracts. So there is, obviously, it's more expensive. There's depending on how much metal rains on Odessa, it's more or less expensive, but it exists. Now, in BERD, we've recognized that this is not enough. And we have thanks to actually a generous grant from the French government and a few others, but the largest came from the French government. We have created a war risk insurance facility, which is now up and running. It's 110 million euros of capacity, so that because and it's focused on transport for now, inland transport. It doesn't yet cover the fixed assets and so on. And so on inland transport, it enables to cover much more than 110 million in a year, because these tend to be contracts that are linked to a specific transport from an exporter to Ukraine and so on. And it's up and running. We've had our first loss of a truck that was destroyed. Pierre will be happy to hear that we are not eating his capital yet, because people pay a premium for it. So the premium has actually absorbed the loss, which is a normal insurance business. It's working with 3 local companies, Unica, Colonnade, and Inga, who provide this service, this guarantee to their clients. Thanks to this facility, it enables them to boost the amount that they can cover for each transport. We've worked on with Aon on this, and we have in the spring of next year we will look at the feasibility of extending it to other types of assets than just transport, either cargo or vehicles, and see where this takes us. It's very important. Now, I'd like to point out though that war insurance is only one component of investing in Ukraine. It can be, and it should not be, in my view, a deciding factor, because if you invest in Ukraine, you're going to put some of your business there, send some of your best people there, hire local people. No one wants to see that become a tragedy, and that is not covered by insurance. Okay, and so you invest in Ukraine because you believe in the market, because you believe in the improvement of the rule of law, and that's going to be a priority. It continues to be a priority in the background. Okay, I very much like that Ukraine pulled out this legislation on anti-corruption. It shows us, Davide, that we have a very strong civil society in the country. Also shows that the temptation is still there. Okay, because who put forward this law in the first place, and for what reason? Yeah. So the work to improve the rule of law and the corruption environment in Ukraine is not finished. It continues during the war, and it will continue unabated, of course, in the peace as it goes. Now, the opportunities are there today. They will be larger under a ceasefire, especially, again, as I said, if there is a credible guarantee arrangement. War risk will remain a necessity even after the ceasefire, in my opinion. It's one of the components. Availability of finance is another. We are blessed with a banking sector that's been reformed heavily before the large-scale invasion started. This is a strong, resilient banking sector. The central bank just published a report on this. However, it does not have the reserve capacity to boost lending to the economy to the extent that will be required after the war. The capital is there, but the growth in the economy is going to utilize this capital very, very quickly, which is why one of the things we want to do, for example, as BERD, we are engaging already now on two critical cases with the government. One is privatization of state-owned banks, because I'm convinced that after the war, the government will have other things to do than put more capital into state-owned banks. They will have hospitals to rebuild and schools to rebuild and so on. And the transformation of the stock exchange in Kyiv. The stock exchange is nowhere, okay? It doesn't work. And so having a functioning stock exchange is going to be a way for Ukrainian and foreign actors alike to raise debt and equity on the local market. That's also, it sounds a bit completely disconnected from the war, but in fact, it is an essential tool to accelerate the reconstruction. And if I have one objective, is to make sure that I'm not late when these things happen, okay? We need to be prepared rather than start working on a stock exchange when people say, oh, I need money, where do I find my money? Well, I need to have a stock exchange up and running when that happens.
Maybe I will just add a few words. Francis covered, I think, very, very well the dimensions when EBRD, where EBRD is very much involved. Obviously, this question of being reassured goes much beyond, as very well said, the different tools we put together. The first, when Xavier Niel, for example, told me why he's investing in Ukraine, and he has done the largest investment in the country in the last 10 years, he didn't ask for risk insurance. He said because it's an investment which will be profitable, and I believe in the people, in the assets I'm investing in. So so the question of war risk insurance is an important one, but we shouldn't think that the tail is more or less leading the dog and focus more or less on the quality and the beauty of the dog itself, which is the first thing I think investors will look into. By the way, all the largest French investments which have been done in the last month, and will be able to announce a very large one probably in the next days, from Orano, from Xavier, in the railway sectors, are the question of risk insurance is not at all the main issue which comes up to us. Obviously, there are companies which needs risk insurance on the different dimension, but I would say we should have a little bit more subtle way of looking at the issue. Second, beyond inland transport, where the scheme EBRD work on, and as Francis said, which we help through our 250 million euros guarantee to EBRD. We have other tools, for example, the one of Banque Publique d'Investissement for French companies which are investing in Ukraine, up to 97.5% of the investment in the fixed asset, more or less, can be covered in fact, at the end of the day, by the French taxpayer, if a missile or a drone. So it's the most generous scheme in the G7. So I just mentioned that because I think it complements what has been very much launched from EBRD, and it should reassure. But I will end by the fact that obviously. There are also needs we are trying to cover. We'll come back maybe to equity in the financial sector. I think there is a dire need for more capacity to cover equity needs from companies which operate in Ukraine or would like to operate in Ukraine. Hence also the initiative we launched at the European level on this EU flagship fund. But more fundamentally, the security guarantees, and you saw that President Zelensky spent a bit of time in the last hours here, quite close to here, with European leaders. In a way, having a package of guarantee which ensure the future, sustainable future of Ukraine is the most important element that hinges a lot on things which are part of hard powers, where what we talk about is defense equipment, make the Ukrainian army stronger, reassure by also, and as you know, we've been putting that at the table, being very criticized February last year when President Macron said that there were no red lines, and even strategic signature from countries like France, like the US, having people on the ground was an important element of this discussion. And we see how much progress we've made in having more consensus among Europeans, but also in the last days discussing that very much with the US. So I think that's really important also to be sure that Europeans are committed. Obviously, they've showed in the last months by putting even more money in Ukraine. Are planning to support, it's not an investment for the next 2 months. It's an investment at the European level for the 10 or 20 next years. And I think that also is a signal which is very important for private sector companies.
Thank you very much. Indeed, we see, we see that despite the war going on, investments are being made. It's not massive, but a few very large French investments have been made since the beginning of the war. We noticed and mentioned NGG and Xavier Niel on the telecom sector. There are others to be made. So indeed, quite interesting. It's not to notice that maybe the size of these investments is even much larger than what had been made before started. Carlos, I see that you would like to raise and then.
Yeah, I fully support what you have been saying. But 2 days ago, we met with a representative of NGG, of Xavier in Ukraine. And he was not only saying that they were, after 1 year after the acquisition, they were extremely happy the way this acquisition was doing, but even more, they are investing now a lot in the modernization of their company in Ukraine. So it's really, it's a good illustration of us. You mentioned the presence of the French bank. I am the representative of Crédit Agricole. We continue to invest in Ukraine. We are quite comfortable in the way we are doing the business. By the way, it's extremely profitable. And we will reinvest this profit in Ukraine. This is really the basic of our project in the country. So Francis, if there is a SME from Toulouse who wants to come to Ukraine, they will be welcomed by the French bank. Before going to the Ukrainian or other international, I would suggest them to knock at our door. They will be extremely welcome. We have a good team there who can advise, who can finance, who can help them to start a business. My question would be more on the defense industry, because when you look the dynamics of the Ukrainian economy right now, it's really supported by the effort in defense industry. And probably the Ukrainian invented a new way, unfortunately, to make the war with very cheap system. It's a low-cost war, extremely efficient. You know about the drone industry, which is something which didn't exist 3 years ago, which is extremely dynamic. If you visit some companies active in this sector, it's purely startup. Who is that? How do you see the cooperation between Europe and maybe France in particular in this area, which we don't disclose too much because there is a bit of secrecy maybe? But do you think first that we can learn from Ukraine? And number two, that we can cooperate in some area which would be beneficial for both parties?
So maybe I can start on that, because EBRD is not yet investing in defense, but the question is a very lively question about the financial tools also to support European and Ukrainian companies in this endeavor. Because it's when you meet President Zelensky, the government, the first issue is defense. Obviously, the real economy, what we're talking about, energy, is very important. But the first issue is defense. And I think we have to look that as really a strategic opportunity also for Europe, and making Ukraine a strategic assets for our place, our role in the world. And that starts from companies, industries, which see Ukraine as such. And while I think on the civil side of things, we have all the instruments now on place, both obviously at the multilateral, European, and now my focus has been very much to develop this toolbox at the bilateral level. I think in defense, we are not there, to be very frank, discussing with European firms and especially French firms. We have a specific, more or less, structure of the defense industry in France, which favors a lot the very large companies, very sophisticated, who are with engineers who have done great studies, but who are interested in the most luxury products, which more or less hit a target with a 2 centimeters more or less margin, but which cost 1 million as missiles compared to what you said. And I see when I visit plants in Ukraine, which work 24 hours, 7 days a week, which produce more or less drones and missiles, which cost $1,000, and which do what has been, for example, this massive attack on the 1st of June, which can hit and destroy 1/3 of the fleet, strategic fleet in Ukraine, 5,000 kilometers from Ukrainian borders. I think we have to learn a lot. I think what is quite important is to see it as an opportunity, and an opportunity to be seized now, because otherwise these companies will either be supported and bought out by others, or, by the way, will collapse because they will not have financial capacity when the war will end. And I think it's a little bit a race in terms of and where speed is of the essence, where building joint venture, there is one, but only one between Thales and UDI, the Ministry of Defense agency. I think we have to have many of them, bringing, by the way, Ukrainian companies also investing in France, making joint ventures in our country, creating jobs, and bringing their operational innovation capacity, but also French companies building factories in Ukraine, like some German companies have done. And that's critical, I think, in terms of integration of value chain, but also building of, in fact, of the strategic assets. It's very impressive that now, more or less, Ukrainian companies in the defense sector are covering 40% of their defense needs by themselves. It was 2% 2 years ago. So this is possible, and companies have to understand that speed is really important. Last mention is tech companies. I will be this month, by the way. There are two big events in Lviv, one which is organized by Fedorov, which is on a brave one, in fact, in less than 10 days, and the second one, which is IT Arena in Lviv at the end of the month, where there will be 5,000 tech companies in Lviv. I'm trying to bring also French companies there, because I think in this sector of defense, like in others, going there, finding partners, discussing concrete projects, I think is the first step to envisage either joint ventures, ideas of collaboration in industrial terms.
I think things are moving quite rapidly in the sector. We at Jeantet, we have a defense tech department. We are where we see there is a lot of demand as well from Ukrainian side, startups looking for financing to expand with great technologies, as from the French side. And we will be present at the conferences. We will be accompanying quite a lot of companies. So yes, this is a sector where we see has been did not exist about 2-3 years ago. It's something that picks up very rapidly, and it shows that also things are continue to move and to improve on certain sectors where needed. Frank, I think you had a question, and then
Good morning, Franck Simonet. I'm with the Ellipse Project. We are an SME, not from Toulouse, but from Boulogne-Billancourt. Nobody's perfect. We have started to implement our first project in Ukraine as one of the 19 laureates of the franco-ukrainien. And we are hoping to sign next contract sometimes this month for a project in the healthcare sector. So we design, finance, and build turnkey infrastructures in the healthcare and in the IT sectors. Basically, we build hospitals, we build data centers and telecommunication networks. So we, in Ukraine, there are obviously lots of projects. So it's not a question of finding the right project; it's finding the right financing, obviously. So we talked about the existing tools for Ukraine, the loans, the multilateral loans. There is also one way to finance infrastructures, which is public-private partnerships, PPPs. And I would like to have the view of the panelists on the opportunity, possibilities, perspectives of PPPs in Ukraine. Thank you.
So I think it's a very good question. We have we can benefit from work that we did before the large-scale invasion. We transformed the PPP framework in Ukraine in 2015, 16, 17, when I was there, to enable investments in things like ports and other critical infrastructure. And so that law is there. It's, in my view, we did it together with the government of Ukraine and the IFC, modern and fit for purpose. Whether it works for turnkey hospitals, I don't know, but the framework is there. That's the good news. Then a PPP project is a complicated thing, right? It's always, there's two things that are most complicated when it comes to public projects is concessions and PPPs, okay? And so over time, the fact that the law is there doesn't mean that the courts understand it, okay? And so it will need to be tried and tested, but the good news is we're starting from a modern base, and not, because before that, let me tell you, they were like, it's the 5th or 6th PPP law that we that happened in Ukraine since independence, but it's the first that was not made to support one specific project promoted by one powerful political person. Okay, it's actually meant as a normal PPP framework. So we have that. You tell me if it works, if it doesn't, but we can only encourage the government to do that. As Pierre said, he said something very, very important, is that I think one of the key success factors of the reconstruction of Ukraine is that the Ukrainians need to be leading the strategy and the choice of projects that will be financed going forward, because you can't assume that you will rebuild like for like. A hospital has been destroyed. You need the same number of hospitals in the exact same locations, or you need the same number of power plants in the exact same locations, and so on and so forth. So, and that should be done not by some thinkers in EBRD or the World Bank, but by the Ukrainian authorities. What we've contributed there is teams. We called it the Ukraine Reforms Architecture of young and motivated Ukrainians. There's no foreigners in those teams that work with the ministries and with the Prime Minister to support. Initially, they were called reforms architecture because they were meant to support reforms in peacetime. They've been repurposed to support the transformation of the Ukrainian economy and the prioritization of the projects in the reconstruction phase.
Okay, thank you. Maybe because we're going to be running out of time, one last question, if you don't mind, and then we can have questions afterwards with the audience during the break. Thank you.
Thank you. Short question. François Charles, I'm president of IRC. We are think on do talk, journalists do talk about European dynamics. And about energy, Pierre said that Ukraine was a laboratory. And could it be interesting to develop mattering technologies like hydrogen on SMR, small medium reactor, nuclear? And what about action of EBI or EB fund on some infrastructure? Not only in building, but to develop drones on the civilian project. Thank you.
I can start on that. So in the energy sector, obviously, it's a country which is which has a lot of potential. Francis mentioned obviously the gas infrastructure, which the gas reserve is the equivalent of the one of France, Germany, and Norway combined. So it's a very large capacity. There is also the network which potentially also for hydrogen is a very good channel also of export based on a production capacity, which there are quite a lot of projects and people and companies looking at that potential nowadays. So it's not completely something like a dream, which is which is for the very long term. For SMR, obviously, nuclear is a very important, obviously, element of the power mix. In a way, France and Ukraine, I always say, are a little bit siblings or sisters in terms of energy mix, because and Ukraine thinks itself in the next 30 years with the same target as what we have in terms of energy mix in France. Probably a little bit more fossil fuel than we do, but also very much based on nuclear and renewables. So the question of decentralization of power production is key. Nuclear is for the time being based on very large scale plants, obviously, which are at the center of always the scrutiny of Russians, but also what we are trying to do in terms of energy security on these sites. SMRs have potentially a big role to play because it's a smaller scale, it's more decentralized. The question is the readiness of the technology, and as you know, they are not available now. We are discussing, by the way, what the multilateral development banks can do in that space, even EBRD, because that was very much excluded beyond the fact that obviously EBRD has been a key institution in terms of nuclear safety, but in a way, both the pressure of the new American administration and the old, focus of France on nuclear makes even EBRD and others think about what should be the role of EBRD, for example, in in upstream research linked to SMRs, and that's an important element, obviously, for the future. So I think on both hydrogen and nuclear, I think there is a lot of not only potential in projects with different scale of in different stages in terms of readiness of these projects, but we are working on that.
Sure.
Complete what Pierre said. Yes, I mean, SMRs are probably part of the future energy mix of Ukraine. I would caution against saying that SMRs are part of the recovery and reconstruction. Okay? If you want an SMR to give you warmth for the winter, prepare for a long winter, a long next winter, a long next winter. I mean, it's 10 years before these things are up, right? So yes, they are part of the solution. If you want energy now, these are not the solution.
Very clear. Thank you all. Thank you to the panelists. Thank you to the audience. It's been very instructive. I think it take me too much time to summarize everything that has been said. But it's important to see that everybody continues supporting Ukraine. There is a political will, there is an institutional will, and of course, we are here at the chamber to assist you with the projects, to put you in contact with authorities, with the right persons within the organizations, and would be happy to see you having a project or continuing your projects in Ukraine. Thank you so much for everybody, and have a nice day. Thank you.
On en parlait avec